All right. So existing terrain models. So, and I know the question came up yesterday. I really want to kind of go over this and talk about this with the terrain and planimetric deliverables. Currently, again, as we talked yesterday, the terrain model itself and the planimetrics are all one file. So one of the things that we're updating with that, and there's a few reasons why we're updating that. One is what we talked about yesterday with federating files, speed of files, processing time, and also referencing and pulling information and how many times things go across the board. That's one reason. Another reason is why we want this separated out is because for planimetrics, we want to be able to utilize planimetrics on whatever specialty group is using that. Not always does terrain go across the board to all the specialty groups. Planimetrics always will, but the terrain not so much. The terrain file we want separated out too as well because of geometry use and corridor use. If I have, and we'll get into the creating complex terrains and the importance of that, the reasoning on all of those things, Lindsay will cover that. But as we get into creating complex terrains, a lot of the reason we do that is so that we have continuity and connected data throughout the project and not having discontinuities and disconnections from data throughout the projects. For instance, if I have a terrain file and I keep getting information in that terrain file, and if I have to update that terrain file in those planimetrics at the same time, it's going to have a terrain, and I'll have to save that as a updated file. Well, then all of a sudden, a lot of my drainage elements will be disconnected. Corridors are disconnected. A lot of rework that has to be done with that. One of the things that we'll be doing in VisionCAD is actually we'll be putting out a video for the surveyors on the training on that, on exporting out DGN terrain as a DGN terrain. It's actually a pretty easy process of just picking, once you've created your terrain from your field book, they then would export as DGN, and what that does is it exports out the terrain model itself. So then you have an existing terrain model itself. The reason we do that is what I was explaining there, but the other reason too is if I have a planimetrics and a terrain file in the same file, I create a complex terrain file using that terrain. Well, I'm still referencing those planimetrics, which still knows it has a terrain file. So when I go in my geometry file and I cut a profile, I've got two elements of existing terrain. Also, when I do my geometry or I run my corridor and I connect that to a terrain, a lot of times it'll get connected to the wrong terrain. Well, then I've got to go do a whole bunch of rework on that. So a lot of the reasons we're separating out those files are what we just talked about here. That's why that matters first and foremost. So that's really the biggest reason to do that. And then what we want to check for. So again, this isn't really how we're creating terrains, different things. We are going through go through the process of creating a complex terrain, but it's also something that we'll be expecting surveyors to do, whether it's surveyors at CDOT, a consulting surveyor, whoever that may be. What we want to check for, though, as that's coming in, is we want to check for survey monuments. So any point controls. So point controls from the survey, matching that up with the land survey control diagram. So we want to make sure that we get a copy of the land survey control diagram, whether that's PDF or what it is, or spreadsheet. We want to make sure we're checking northing, eastings elevations. Are those matching up with my file? So when I get that information, I want to make sure, okay, I've got the planimetrics, I've got my point controls, I've got my terrain, I know what everything is lining up. Cool, I can match that and everything is good to go. That's one of the biggest things. I mean, survey is our foundation. That's our basis. If the survey file is off and we haven't checked it, then that's on us for not checking it and working with the surveyor. This really helps us work with the surveyor back and forth. What we need, what the expectations are, what they can provide, all of those types of things. So that's really kind of the foundation of this with existing terrain models. And then I guess before we jump over, Lindsay, to you creating the complex terrains, let's go ahead and stop recording right now, Sahar, and see if we got some questions.